Welcome to Life and Liberty Radio with David Householder. I'm Josh Jose, and together, you and I are taking another step toward freedom, both spiritual and political. So get comfortable, breathe in, and ignite your imagination. Envision a society that is spiritually deep and truly free. It's easy if you try.
I have a confession to make every single Sunday that I'm out of town. Without fail, 100% of the time, I go to church. I look for an interesting church, something that will teach me something, and I go there no matter where I am. There's only one time there's been an exception. I was flying across the ocean, and Sunday disappeared as I crossed the date line, and so there was just no way to do that. But that was the Pacific Ocean, and it happens sometimes. You just miss a Sunday. But really, the truth is, I always go to church on Sunday. Always, always, always. And the reason I do is not because I'm super religious. It's not that I'm so pious that I just have to go to church. And it's not that I have some kind of sense of obligation or debt, like some kind of rule I have to keep. You know, if I break this rule, I'll be in big trouble, or God's going to get me. I just don't believe that. I don't think God even cares if we go to church on Sunday. In fact, it's pretty clear from the Bible, he kind of prefers Saturday. And how it got to Sunday, we're not really sure from history. But the truth is, I go to church every Sunday. And the reason I do is because it's an incredible window into a very intimate part of any neighborhood, especially in the rest of the world where people don't drive as much as they do in the States. And people walk to church. Most people walk to church throughout the world, Europe certainly, and all over the global south. People generally walk to church. There's no big parking lots in most churches, except for in the United States, especially Texas, where the parking lots are just gigantic outside of churches. But in the global south, people walk there, which means you see local people. And you see local people at their most vulnerable, and you get to understand what's going on in the community. Why anybody who loves travel would skip going to a local church, I don't get it. Because if you love to experience other cultures, there is no faster way into a community. You don't even have to be a super devout Christian to get that. That just makes so much sense. And so I just do that because it's part of my travel regimen. Certainly, I'm a practicing Christian in a big way. I'm a Christian leader, for goodness sake. But it's not because I'm a leader that I go. It's because I want to experience and learn something. And the truth is, you learn something when you encounter people that are very different than you are, and you encounter them at a social and spiritual level. I mean, where else does that happen on some kind of a tour bus? It just doesn't. So I do that. I remember when I was very young, the very first time this happened, I was very young. I mean, early grade school. We were at the Clear Lake Resort, Luffel's Clear Lake Resort, and we were camping in a trailer back in the 60s, and my dad and my mom were there, and my brothers, and my grandparents. And I remember that trip very well because I was afraid of the outhouse, that my brother would fall in and die, because I'd never seen an outhouse before. And also I got hit in the face with a baseball from another kid who was camping with us, and kind of nearsighted. Got hit in the face with lots of baseballs growing up. But I think I remember most was we were in Eatonville, Washington, at Clear Lake, and we went to a Baptist church. Now, I was raised Lutheran, and so this Baptist church, my eyes were like saucers the whole time. I said, whoa, look at this. This is so different. There was a man up front preaching in a suit, and he wasn't wearing a robe, but he was all worked up. I'd never seen anybody worked up preaching before like that. And he went on for the better part of an hour, and I just sat there clinging to every word, and he just talked about Samson. Samson did this, and Samson did that in the Bible. And I was spellbound by the whole thing. I still remember it some 40-some years later. Think about that, as if it was yesterday. I can picture the whole thing. And then they pass communion around in these plates. Well, if you're Lutheran, like I was, we have very good table manners, almost like Episcopalians. And so we really take communion seriously. And I was way too young to take communion, yet they were passing around these plates, and kids my age were taking communion. And my dad shook his head and said, don't do that. Just passed it by me. Okay. And I thought it was just fascinating to see a whole nother world, different people, at a very vulnerable spiritual level. My best experience ever was with my son, Lars. This was, I think, about the year 2005 or 6 or somewhere in there. And my son and I went to Europe on a Europass and had a great, great time. And we went to Nice in France as part of the trip. We were on a Sunday. I thought, well, hey, let's find a church. So we found a little storefront church, a little storefront Pentecostal church. And it was populated mostly by Africans who were there as guest workers in the tourist industry, because there's a lot of French-speaking Africans, of course. And we went there, and it was drop dead Pentecostal. And oh my goodness, for a guy from Minnesota who was born in Idaho, this was something else. And it was so fun to watch. And it was all in French, and this African guy comes up to me and said, hey, you don't understand French. So I understand a little French, but he gave me headphones, and he said, I'll tell you what, I'll speak into the microphone back here at the sound booth, and I'll translate into English for you, because I want you to know what's going on. So there was this amazing, amazing service in Africa. In Nice. It may as well have been in Africa. And they called for prayer afterwards, and I went up for prayer. Why not? If the Creator throws a party, I'm going to show up. And a whole bunch of Africans gathered around me, laid hands on me, prayed, and electric shocks went through my body. And I just flew out on the ground and was out cold in the spirit. And this was something certainly not conventional for me. And I felt God was speaking to me as I was lying there, and don't know how long I was out. But that's the kind of encounter you just don't get on a cruise ship. So I would just invite people to do those kinds of things. Just this morning, I went to the Evangelische Gemeente Olmord here in Holland, one of my favorite churches when I'm away from home. I've been going there for years. Love the place. Just love the place. And it's a little warehouse church here in Olmord, which is a suburb of Rotterdam. And it's a lot of elderly people live here in high rises. And a lot of people from other countries live here in Olmord. And it's kind of modern, kind of IKEA as a suburb, if you can picture that. And just you go into this place, and it's this little warehouse, and it's very unassuming people. And the worship music takes off, and people just really get into it. And tears come to my eyes. There's something about going to church in a foreign area that just emotionally just cuts into your spirit. It's a good thing. You feel very vulnerable in a situation like that. And it was very touching. And the message was given by a guy almost 7 feet tall who was 65 years old, who was wearing a nice suit. He looked like a businessman, a CEO, and he's just a guest preacher, I guess, from another town. And turns out he was dead 3 months ago. He was dead for 45 minutes. They tried to revive him. And for 9 days, he was non-responsive on machines. They were going to pull the machines, and he squeezed someone's hand. So they said, hey, let's keep him alive. 3 months later, he's fine. And there he is. He told about his miracle story in a very understated Dutch way. And there's a little polite clapping in the background during his message, but it was magnificent. And I'll try to include the podcast if I can find that. But it was beautifully, beautifully done. And I remember when we lived in Germany, we lived in a little town on the Rhine River. It was an old Roman town from 2,000 years ago. It was Oberwinter am Rhein, and my son was actually born there. And we had a little apartment on a crooked street, in a crooked town, on a crooked house, the whole deal. And it was beautiful to live there. And 50 yards away was the church, which was the Evangelical Church, Evangelische Gemeente Oberwinter. And it went way back to the 1500s, of course. And the organ was from 1722. And Christina, who was the organist, would play magnificent pipe organ stuff at the end. And we'd all turn around in the pews and lean against the pew behind us and clap afterwards. And my wife spoke no German when we moved there, when I was a student. And she just was greatly pregnant with our son and went off to choir practice and joined the choir. And we're still friends with some of the families from that choir to this day. And there's something very special about going to church in a different country. So I invite you, whether you're a believer or not, if you're traveling, show up in church. You can find out. Look at the sign, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever, and stay for coffee afterwards and talk to people and connect with people. It's the deepest connection you will ever make in areas where you travel.
So put some sunshine and water on these fresh ideas and keep taking that next step toward freedom. Join us every weekday for the latest life and liberty ideas. The views expressed on this program are purely those of the presenter, and not necessarily those of the advertisers or organizations or persons with which the presenter has a relationship. Please click on the Amazon banner at the top of the Life and Liberty page, and consider doing all your online shopping through this portal. See you tomorrow.